Hey everyone, welcome to day 5 of the road to resurrection. We've arrived at Good Friday. We've been slowly reading through the Gospel of Matthew and pausing at some of the most important moments in the life of Jesus during that final week of Easter. Today we're going to be in Matthew chapter 27, and where we left off yesterday, Jesus has been arrested. He went through the 4 trials that led into Friday morning. And then the last thing we read was that they led him to be crucified. And I was thinking how every year our thoughts turn toward the cross. And every year we spend time thinking about and pondering the cross of what it means. Why crucifixion? Why this way? And every year there's fresh light for us. Every year we manage to explore new understanding and greater understanding and more depth. We plunge the heart and mind and the love of God in new ways. And I hope that today's study will be just that for you, to continue to cultivate your understanding of the cross. Continue to cultivate your understanding of the heart of God and the gospel. Beginning in verse 32, we read these words: "As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross." Now, Simon is not from the Palestinian area. He's not from Palestine. He's from North Africa. So this is an African man who is going to carry the crossbeam of Jesus to Golgotha. And we know Jesus is depleted of his physical resources. He is out of strength as he has spent a night of brutality because he doesn't have the strength to carry the cross himself. And they came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And there they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall. Now, this is not an act of mercy. This is an act of mockery. And after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots. And sitting down, they kept watch over him there. It's amazing the brevity that Matthew says that the soldiers simply sat down and watched and waited for him to die. Matthew also says something else very briefly, just 3 words. They crucified him there. And Matthew spares us all of the details and all of the horror of crucifixion. And we have to go to the ancient sources to understand what exactly took place with crucifixion, for us to appreciate what happened in the crucifixion of a person. You see, crucifixion was not just a form of execution. It was meant to kill, but it was meant to do much more than that. It was meant to degrade, and it was meant to humiliate. That's why most crucifixions were always done publicly in a public place in the middle of a town along a popular road, and the person would be crucified and left to hang there, sometimes for days. It was one of the most effective advertising strategies in history. It was Rome's way of threatening anyone who would break the law or cause an uprising. Anyone who had seen a crucifixion would never forget it. It would be one of those things that could cause nightmares, something that you would want to erase from your memory, but you would not be able to. And one of the most disturbing parts of crucifixion was the fact that the victim could hang there, sometimes for days, still able to speak, still able to beg and to plead. And family members could gather, but they couldn't help, they couldn't touch, they couldn't assist. They just watched you die. And you were left exposed to all of the elements: the heat during the day, the cold during the night, packs of wild dogs, insects, the infection of your wounds, tetanus. Who knows what all could happen? People would throw things on you to humiliate you even more. And your family would be left to just watch it. And so Matthew spares us those sorts of details, and he says they crucified him. His hands were nailed to a crossbeam, his feet probably nailed to a vertical beam, lifted up, and then dropped in a hole in a place called the skull. And over his head, they placed a sign that said, "King of the Jews." And it was written in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, which were the 3 primary languages in that part of the world. They mocked him and they tortured him. And somehow he found the spiritual ability, the spiritual resources to pray. And he prayed, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. And then we read about two exchanges, two conversations that Jesus has. One are with two other thieves that are crucified alongside of Jesus. And you recall that one thief ridicules from his own cross, you saved others, why can't you save yourself? But the second thief, he pleads and says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus says to him, surely today you will be with me in paradise. The other exchange is between the Apostle John and Mary, Jesus' mother, where Jesus, he gives Mary's care over to John, and Mary goes under the household of John, and John will watch over her and care for her as his own mother from that point forward. And so we read as this crucifixion is taking place, we begin to understand that something more is happening than just the execution of a common person, because heaven speaks. And heaven speaks in the form of 4 miracles. Not miracles of rescue, but miracles of judgment. There is the miracle of darkness from the 6th hour to the 9th hour, from noon to 3. Much like the miracle of darkness that took place in Egypt during the Exodus. The miracle of the veil being torn in the temple, this massive curtain that was part of the Holy of Holies. Jesus had said, I will destroy the temple and rebuild it. And there during the crucifixion, the holy curtain is torn from top to bottom, which means God was the one who tore it. God is the one that desecrated it. He was leaving the temple. He would no longer dwell there. We talked about that on Monday. And then there's the miracle of the earthquake, where the earth rumbled and shook. And we think about Moses on Mount Sinai and how the earthquake meant that God was near. And then there is the miracle of resurrection. And Matthew says it in passing. And you almost want to say, pause, Matthew. Tell me more about that. But Matthew says that during this crucifixion, during the earthquake, many tombs were opened and many saints came into town and appeared to people. And there's no more explanation other than just to say, and this happened. This is something else that happened. So Jesus is there, and these things all are happening, and then death comes. And with one word, Jesus says, it is finished. Tetelestai. And the gospel writers tell us that he cried out and he breathed his last. And one of the Roman centurions, one of the soldiers who had been there the whole time, who had witnessed the events of the cross, he says, surely this was the Son of God. Surely this man was innocent. And so maybe as we think about these things, we ask the question, why? Why a cross? Why something so severe? Why something so brutal? You see, to understand why the cross, you have to understand sin. You see, the magnitude of sin and the severity of sin is not measured by the act of the sin, but it's measured by the person or the one who is sinned against. See, there's a big difference in forgetting your third cousin's birthday and forgetting your child's birthday or your spouse or your mom's birthday. The act is the same, right? You're forgetting someone's birthday, but the relationship makes it very, very different. It's one thing to go out and throw white paint on a tree out in the woods. It's another thing to walk into a museum and to throw white paint on a Rembrandt. You see, the act is the same, but the severity of sin is measured by the one who is sinned against. And our sin is ultimately against our Creator. It's against God. That makes our sin very, very serious. It brings it to a magnitude that we cannot even comprehend, which required something that we can't comprehend. And when you think about the cross, you think, oh, how grotesque. Yes, how grotesque, because it shows us the heart of humanity. But you also say, how beautiful. because it also shows us the heart of God. And so I pray that today, on this Good Friday, you think more about the cross than you've thought in a long time. I hope that you will ask the Lord to help you come to a depth of understanding, to a deeper place of gratitude, to know that in the cross you have the clearest picture of your very own heart. And in the cross you have the clearest picture of the heart of God. Have a good Friday, and we'll see you tomorrow for Saturday.